sophomore at GW, and it's nice to see you here, and it's a pleasure to interview you here. And so, can you tell us about your career journey and what inspired you to enter the field of cybersecurity leadership?
Thank you, Jen. My name is Pap Cisse. I am a professor of information system adjunct here at George Washington University. And thank you for this interview. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience with you guys and the students. My journey in cybersecurity started a long time ago when I worked for the federal government as an IT project manager, and I started dabbling a little bit more into systems, cybersecurity, and then the first law came out, which was FISMA. FISMA is the Federal Information Security Management Act. And then we started working on those, on federal systems, and then I wanted to learn more and know more about it, so I ended up doing a PhD in cybersecurity.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So, what were some of the key turning points in your professional development that shaped you into the leader you are today?
I think key turning points were, first of all, hard work, being curious, and I always had like a foot in academia and then foot in private industry or federal space, working, and also I would say good mentors. Like I really had good mentors who steered me in the right direction, challenged me, asked me a lot of questions, a lot of tough questions, and really presented to me a lot of opportunities where I could learn and further my career, but not only learn and further my career, but also test the academic theories and know, what was holding water and what was not holding water. So mentorship, being willing to learn, having great teams and great people along the way to help me.
Okay, great. So we had that project that we researched and also a lot of guest lectures from other, like for example, from hotel managers talk to us about leadership and how do you get motivated, or how do you motivate other people in an organization?
To clarify, the question is to how do you get maturation as a leader?
Yeah.
So technically I would say it's a process. Some people have it natural, some people adapt to situations, some people learn it. Some people land into the leadership position and then grow into it. So it depends on the person, the situation, and the environment, right? But I think what's important is also having role models and mentors, because those are people you look up to that, either their style, right, or the way they do, or their success, or where they are, and how they run their organizations could be examples for you to emulate. Therefore, you either emulate what they're doing, and if you're lucky enough to have access to them, you can ask them to mentor you, or you can ask them to also share with you their journey that lended them to where they are and what lessons they've learned, so that you could apply those lessons. And lessons learned could be both positive or negative, right? So you don't want to do the pitfalls, right? You don't want to fall into where they fell, right? You want to learn that so you can avoid it to be more successful. So that's how I would say, depending on the industry, depending on the people who are successful, figure out who they are and try to work with them.
Thank you for that. So the next question is, how would you describe your leadership style and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, that's a very tough question. I think my leadership style is I would say, it's a mix of participatory leadership and servant leadership. And let me explain why. Participatory leadership in a sense that you always want to learn from other people. I think if you remember in class, we did say one thing, that even though I was the professor in the class, teaching the instructor, I also learned from the students. So it's every situation you see is a mutual learning situation. You learn from the students and you teach them something.
Hi, my name is Fatima Bari, and for my capstone project, I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Pape Cisse, an executive cybersecurity expert and co-founder of the Center for Cyber Diplomacy and Leadership. One of the most meaningful things he said was how mentors change his life. He also emphasized how guidance from the right people help him grow, especially during uncertain moments. And he had a lot of uncertain moments, which I really connected with, because as someone who's also navigating school, work, and future plans, I feel like it's very important to have a good mentor, not just for like knowledge, but it's important to have a direction of where you're going. Like if you have a great mentor, from my perspective, I feel like you do well in life if the right person is in your life, can put you on the right path. He also shared a moment where he failed when he didn't acknowledge or speak to the investors in the room during a business pitch. That stuck with me because like it taught me that human capital isn't just about hiring or managing people. You need that connection with people to really go somewhere. Human capital is all about like valuing everyone you encounter. Like, don't just walk in a room and ignore everybody and feel like, oh, I'm gonna go in this room, get what I want. No, people outside that room are the people that can like take you places. And yeah, so human capital is about just valuing everyone you encounter, the energy you bring into a room, how you engage others, and how present you are. It's like basically how you present yourself. And I feel like that stuck with me because I'm someone that like if I walk into a room, I have the tendency to like ignore people because I don't really talk as much. And also, as someone who wants to lead and eventually start a business, this interview made me think deeply about how important people are to every part of success: employees, customers, mentor, even those in the backgrounds. If you ignore your human capital, you risk more than just a bad impression. You risk your whole vision falling apart. Dr. Cisse reminded me that leadership is about balance, owning your wins, but also owning your missteps. Thinking long term, but also never overlooking the people in the present. As I step into my own leadership journey, I'm carrying these lessons with me to be more intentional, more human, and more aware of how my actions affect those around me. So it was a really great interview, and thank you, Dr. Papi Sise, for all the wisdom. I feel like the conversation gave me like a new perspective of how I want to handle things, in the future, not just as a student, but as a future leader. Thank you.
What I took away from the whole interview was that when it comes to general decision making, it is really hard as a leader because what he talked about is that you have to balance out the negative and the positives and who's going to be affected, who's not going to be affected, because you have this certain responsibility and you don't know what's actually going to happen. And it's such like a difficult way, and having like a lot of what if scenarios, if this is going to happen or this is not going to happen, and wondering what's going to happen to everyone, even for yourself, because you're going to put yourself in jeopardy because it is your decision at the end of the day, which really made me think that if I was ever a leader or somebody who is given to this like difficult decision, I do have to like think about the what if scenarios. I have to overthink. I have to somehow make a plan on what's actually going to happen, because at the end of the day, everything's not perfect when you make a decision, because it all ends up on you in this difficult task in order to just have a good company, not to just like not to just like have fully a negative impact of the decision, but having a positive impact as well. But sometimes when you hear decisions, it's not always positive. It can always be very negative most of the times. So that's what really is so difficult when it comes to making decisions. And it is important to just really take your time, just to not only like take less than, it's important to not think about it more than 2 days. It's important to think about it maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but not the longest. And that's what I always see, because I overthink about everything, especially when it comes to decision making. I always think really fast, in which is one of the negative outputs of me. And I think it was a really great point that the professor was making, is that you have to separate the positive and the negatives when making a decision, because again, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And that's what I really liked about it. What I also took away was the importance of communication, especially when you are working in overtime. I think the professor was talking about when he was working in a project or task, it took over time, and it was a lot of people, and a lot of people he was working with was very exhausted, and they just didn't have the time to figure out what the issue was. And he talked about the important thing is to make a crisis communication plan, which that was one of the most perfect elements in when talking one-on-one to your bosses. And a lot of times it is important to set yourself with boundaries, because when you're a leader, it's important to listen to your employees and understand their issues and understanding what's actually going on, instead of just like questioning their abilities, because in the end of the day, they're doing the work and they're putting the time and effort. Even if they didn't ask to stay for overtime, they stay overtime without even asking. They just do it. And it is important to just really listen and understand what the employees are saying, instead of just jumping into conclusions and jumping all the negative factors of what the employee is doing, but understanding how these people are staying their time, their money, their abilities to help you figure out the problem. And creating a crisis communication plan is perfect when talking to one-on-one with your bosses and giving them a plan on what day and what time that they should be available to talk to you and when they're doing the work, which I really appreciated and liked.
Hello, I am Silra, and I'm going to talk about the lessons I learned from the interview that our group did with Professor Sisi on leadership, and also how it relates to our human capital in organizations class. So first, Professor Sisi mentioned about leadership and how hard work is required in order to be a leader. He also said like each person can have a very different experience in the journey of leadership, and it is because some people are born with the skills that are important or necessary for leadership, and some others, they have to go through a process in order to learn the crucial skills in order to be able to become a good leader. This reminded me of the disc assessment that we did in our class, which showed how each person is different character-wise and also personality-wise. And based on these differences in characters and personalities, each person can be either good or bad at a certain job. And this relevance was a very interesting point for me. Second, Professor Sisi talked about the importance of working with good teams. And obviously, teamwork can be either a blessing or a challenge, and it all depends who you are working with. With teams comes conflicts, and that's why chapter 10 of our books talks about conflict, because a good leader knows how to deal and manage differences and disagreements. Lastly, mentorship is another important part of like the interview that Professor Sisi brought up. Completely agree that it is important to have a good mentor and get the necessary trainings. It can be either negative or positive to our leadership career, and it is because often mentors are the first leaders and obviously like role models that people come across, and they can convey messages that can either make or break our career as a leader. All in all, points mentioned in the interview from hard work to curiosity were very crucial, but these were the highlights for me. I believe leadership is more learning about yourself and then being able to manage others. Understand yourself well. A healthy relationship with yourself, it can reflect in your action, be very empowering in influencing others. Influence is key in leadership, because if you aren't able to influence others, not lead a group of people. I want to end my video with this, that a good leader serves itself first in order to serve others. Thank you.
After interviewing Papsuse, I've learned a few key things from his talk, and building a career isn't something you do alone. One of the most important factors in professional and personal growth is having a great team and surrounded by great people. Great teams not only help you to achieve your dreams, but they will also build your dream with you and challenge you, and they will teach you and push you. Next thing will be mentorship. Mentorship plays a crucial role in your career development, especially having a mentor to guide you inspire you and give you honest feedback is very important. Learning from their experiences, especially from their failures, past mistakes, will help you to save time, and it will inspire you and help you to be positive during challenging times. And mentors always show us how to be resilient, and they will help us to understand that our path won't be straight path, but the failures will make us more stronger and develop our career. Leadership itself is a balance of learning and teaching. True leaders are constantly willing to learn from their mentors, peers, or students, anyone. Leadership is all about mutual learning, where leaders and also peers evolve together. When it comes to decision making, ethical judgment is critical. True leader must balance equities and interests of the stakeholders. True leadership is not about choosing easiest path or profitable path, but the faith that holds trust, values, fairness, and long-term trust. Every decision should reflect commitment to integrity, respect the responsibility leaders have to the people and missions they serve. And ultimately, career growth, leadership, and the decision making are deeply interconnected, rooted in a willingness to learn, a commitment to ethical principles, and the ability to lean on and grow with others.
So, in terms of my reflection for the interview, I think the interview went really well. I've never interviewed anybody, so it was a novel experience. It was something that I've never done, and I never, thought I would have to do because I haven't pursued career in journalism. But given that it was a very professional interview, I think that what I got out of it was sort of like a more intuitive idea of what to ask people if I want to find out about an industry or I want to find out about an individual. And I really love like asking questions that we haven't prepared, like follow-up questions, because as I was listening to him, I started like thinking about, oh, how does this connect to what we do in class? For example, I asked him about how does he motivate people, which was a huge part of what we talked about. We talked about the different motivational hierarchy, the Maslow's hierarchy and stuff like that. So, or like hygiene factors. And so I really loved asking him about it, but also I loved filling in the gaps of the knowledge by, for example, asking him about hiring, which we haven't talked about as much, and how to pick the right people. And I wish that the one thing, reflecting on the interview, I wish we could have, or wish we had, is that we had more time to talk to him, because really there was so much I wanted to ask, because this guy obviously has been in a professional setting, in a leadership setting his whole life, and I found his lessons really valuable. And that's why also I was so eager to ask some of these follow-up questions, because as I was sitting there and was listening to him, I was thinking like, wow, I want to really know this, I want to really know that. But I think overall the dynamic of the interview worked really well, where there was one interviewer maybe mainly focusing on the questions that were pre-prepared, while I was more focused on like following up and asking in more detail what he thought about this or thought about that as I thought about it. And yeah, overall I think it worked out really well. I'm really happy. As I said, maybe more time would be useful, but obviously in real life there's not going to be more time. There's going to be more of a time crunch because people are busy. So I think that sort of also served as an educational experience.